Good morning. It is so nice to see you. Who's happy to be alive on this morning? Raise your hand. Fantastic. I am as well. My name is Joseph Fenty. I'm your associate for the service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County. I am an atheist and a secular humanist. I am delighted to gather with people thanks, Tom, that hold my philosophy and those that don't. We are a big tent fellowship where diverse people can gather in community and pursue social justice. We were looking forward to having Reverend Elaine Ferry Silver with us this morning, but she is sick with COVID. So I can just imagine how she's feeling today, not feeling well and not being able to be here. So we will invite her back, but this morning you have me. Thanks, Q. I appreciate you and everyone in the group. It's going to take a community to get through today, so please join in whenever you want to. Or not. This service is being broadcast live on YouTube and will be available as a recording on the UUFCC YouTube channel after the service. I'd like to remind you of a couple of simple procedures that will help our service and broadcast run smoothly. This would be a good time to put your phones in meditation mode. For those of us virtually, you may wish to have a chalice or a candle available for our chalice lighting ritual. We ask that you socially distance as appropriate. Many in our county are still becoming infected with COVID, so let's be cautious. If you are having respiratory symptoms, please limit your contact with others. I have lots of gratitude this morning. I'm grateful for the technology provided by Corey and Tom. Grateful to the buildings and grounds people and the sanctuary decorating team. We had this lovely bouquet of flowers that Laura brought up and this gorgeous tablecloth, which I like a lot. The membership committee and the greeters deserve our special thanks. And of course, Mary Jane and Sandy for doing all the things in the background that make this work. So whatever your faith or lack of faith or the country of your heritage, you are welcome here. Thanks. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. Whether you entered on little feet or walked briskly or ambled or rolled in, you are welcome here. Whether you are relatively new to our community or have been an active member for decades, you are welcome here. We are glad you chose this congregation as your place of renewal and connection today. If you are new here, please stand in body or spirit or wave and state your name, where you're from, so that we can welcome you. Any newcomers today? No? Yes.
Hi, I'm Lou and Judy Rimbach from Salisbury, Maryland.
Salisbury, Maryland. All right. Thank you. And anyone new or feeling new today? Yes. Fantastic. Very good. Very good. Okay, are there any that are making plans to go up north in a short period of time? Yeah, we see some hands up. Okay, so the weather is going to change up there and people will return to their northern homes. If you have not already, please take the opportunity to meet with a member of the membership team if you want to know more about UUFCC. If you are new at home and would like to learn more about our fellowship, you can email Mary Jane at office@uufcc.org. Wherever you are, we are glad you have chosen to spend your time with us this morning. The prelude this morning is Meditation on Breathing, sung by Kim Hamill.
Breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Breathe.
It's my favorite meditation. That's one I often use when I have trouble going to sleep, and it usually puts me in a very restful state. So I'm glad that we start with that this morning. No, I'm not saying go to sleep, but it sort of centers yourself in your body, which is always a good place to be, rather than being harassed by monkey thoughts. So, okay, so we're going to do our chalice lighting, and I'm going to read the chalice lighting words from Reverend Thelos Whitfield. And Patrick knew I was going to call on him because he sits in that sweet spot. So Patrick's going to light the chalice. With the kindling of our flame, we recognize the fragility of life and our own vulnerability as we navigate challenges that always seem to come. May this light remind us of the strength we possess as individuals and collectively as a community to lean into and respond, finding our way forward together. And now we will have our words of affirmation. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. I invite you to light your chalices at home. So please rise in body and or spirit for our opening hymn, When I Am Frightened, and it's number 1012 in the teal hymnal. We will sing along with the First Unitarian Church of Providence. So, getting their hymnals, maybe we can just wait a minute or two as people collect them so that we can all sing together.
Hi, First U family. I am Christy Martel. I am the interim youth music director at First Unitarian Church in Providence, Rhode Island. And today we will be singing When I Am Frightened by Shelley Jackson Denham. This song is really good at getting us to think about how we make space for other people's feelings, particularly children, and how we can show up for them, even if their feelings are ones that are uncomfortable to us. It asks some really good questions of caregivers. whether we're teachers or parents or other types of caregivers. And it's structured as a verse, pre-chorus, chorus that repeats 3 times. But although this musical and lyrical structure is very similar each time, there's a little bit of a difference in the words each time. I really hope you'll sing along with me, or hum along with me, or dance along with me as I sing. And reflect on the ways that you know how to show up for others and be present for their feelings, and the ways that others do that for you as well. When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me? Stand by me willingly. Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me? Comfort me tenderly. Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love. I really hope you sang along. And I can't wait till I get to be with you and hear you sing along and see you dance. I hope that you are staying well. I hope you are enjoying the new sunshine that we're getting here and there. And I hope that you feel that love and compassion that is in this song. Be blessed, everybody.
Thank you. We will have a reading today. This is called A Shoulder to Lean On by Robert Walsh. As I hiked down from a high mountain saddle above Haram Salah, a rain shower passed and the old stone path became slippery. I slipped and fell. I hit my cheekbone on a rock and cut my thumb on the sharp edge of another rock. It hurt, and I was afraid that I might have broken something, afraid that I might get some awful infection from the wound. My climbing companion came quickly and sat with me until I got over the shock and was able to stand. We started down the trail again. I discovered that my tired knees were even more rubbery than before my fall. And I was afraid to fall again. I knew I needed some help. I said, "May I lean on you as we walk?" He said, "Of course." I put my hand on his shoulder and leaned on him as we walked the rest of the way back to town. It is not an easy thing to ask for help. I was taking pride in my ability to get up and down that mountain on my own 2 feet. My self-reliance had usually worked for me, but in that moment, I surrendered it, and my companion gave me his shoulder to lean on, just like it says in all those songs. If one day you should stumble along life's path and injure yourself, and you may be sure that you will, listen for the rhythms of deeper support than just what you hear from within. There are currents, tides, rhythms of creativity, often expressed through the kindness of others, that can hold us up, heal our wounds, and move us along towards Haram Shalah, or wherever we are called to go. We have a long tradition at UUFCC of sharing our joys, sorrows, and life milestones by entering them into the Book of Life. These messages can be written in the Book of Life, which is normally kept in the back of the sanctuary. Those at home are welcome to email your entries to the Book of Life to the address Book of Life, no space, at uufcc.org. Messages should be sent no later than the Saturday prior to the service. Okay, today is March 19th. To everyone who has sent me encouragement, best wishes, and love during the past 6 months, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you. I am doing much better, just need to gain some weight and muscle. Love to each of you, Carol Burkett. Sally M. writes, yesterday I lost a friend I had for 55 years. We met in the emergency department of our local hospital. I was an RN and she was an X-ray tech. We enjoyed bridge and visiting skating competitions, watching ballet. I will really miss her. And I have my own entry. My daughter was recently diagnosed with an illness. She spent the last 2 weeks in a hospital, and she needs to go back. And it's something that will shape both our lives. So I am determined to stand by her through this journey, and her family is offering lots of support. So that is on my mind today. May we hold these and our unspoken joys and sorrows in our heart. May we also hold one another in love and tenderness, so that this fellowship may be a source of strength, comfort, courage, and hope in the days and weeks ahead. Let us take our moment of silence, and I will help you return with the ringing of the bowl. So have you ever gotten a warning from someone that you always need to be prepared for that very rare event? And you say, oh, that's never going to happen. But it has happened. And our speaker cannot be here today. So both Laura and Lori told us on the worship committee, you better have a sermon in your pocket because one day the speaker is not going to show up and you're going to have to finish. And today's that day. So here I am, and I'm glad to be here to fill in the role. Thank you. All right. So today I have a sermon that I'll read to you. It's called The Value of Vulnerability by Janalo Johnstone. And I'll be reading it. I made a few changes, but this is going to be her story. So, I hate being vulnerable. Even reading the synonyms for vulnerable, one of my special secret tips for preparing a sermon on a topic, makes me uncomfortable. Susceptible, weak, defenseless, helpless, exposed. In that hatred of vulnerability, I think I'm like a lot of Unitarian Universalists. We like believing that we have the power and can do things, including changing ourselves, but most particularly the world, through the simple exertion of our will. We like to imagine that we are strong, self-reliant, and independent, maybe more so than most other folks. We identify with the superhero. If there is a giver and a receiver of care, we want to be the giver, not the recipient. Of course, I am overgeneralizing, but our approach to life tends to focus on the active and can-do style of living. Maybe it dates back to Emerson's essay on self-reliance. So what happens when we're not there? When we can't even stand the idea of getting out of bed in the morning? When we find ourselves in a victim role, maybe literally beaten? It can happen, or figuratively abused by the world. It happens in so many ways. When we find ourselves ill or injured, like Walsh was, when we're struck by depression, when we're fearful about our future or security, when we lose someone we love, when we lose a job, when bullies threaten us, when we find ourselves victims of discrimination or unfairness, when the sadness of the news overwhelms us, when we are desperately embarrassed or ashamed, when we age, when we are hurt physically or emotionally, when we remember the hurts of the past, when we turn our anger or resentment in on ourselves and sabotage ourselves again. Some advisors tell us that our vulnerabilities are actually gifts. Sure, that's easy for them to say. They're not experiencing it. Whatever the cause, the complex of feelings that shuts us down or sends us into panic attacks does not feel like an asset. This sitting with difficult feelings and circumstances does not appear to have any value at all. And it does hurt. So we resist our feelings, suppress them, or ignore them. Buck up, try to be brave, putting a front of invulnerability. I saw a cartoon on a friend's Facebook page. It said, "Put your church face on." And the characters in the picture put on a mask with those little round happy faces, like emoticons. So I'm thinking I'm not the only one who resists sharing my vulnerability, but this sermon addresses the value of vulnerability. So I'm supposed to be advocating for it, not against. Of course, I'm not suggesting sharing everything everywhere with everyone. For one thing, perpetual emotional neediness does not win friends. TMI is real. Who knows what TMI is? Too much information. And everyone has different limits on what they can accept from someone else. And sometimes if I'm feeling down, I actually do get past it by being with people who don't know my problems and letting myself get caught up in shared joy. But if I repeatedly resist sharing where I really am, who I really am, ignoring my need for grief, denying some important aspect of my life, I begin to suffer from a loss of authenticity. And what happens to me is I end up getting sick. So trying to present myself as invulnerable is a risk to my body. The stress goes somewhere. The gravest danger, though, is in the risk to the larger body. The risk of disconnecting from those who are prepared to give me a shoulder to hold on to. Real community, closeness, is created when vulnerability happens, not when everyone is strong and independent. Vulnerability may be small and gradual, tiny confessions of what we think or believe, sharing food, risks taken to invite someone else into our lives, doing little favors for one another, lowering our guard to laugh or cry together. Sometimes the vulnerability cracks us open suddenly and widely. When war or terrorism strikes, for example. The late UU minister Forrest Church wrote about the atmosphere in New York City in the aftermath of 9/11. Strangers asked one another if they were okay. Neighbors extended themselves like family. He quotes someone whose failing marriage actually mended in those difficult days. Somehow, said the woman, in the midst of this tragedy, we found each other. And Church adds, the shadow of death brought them back to life again. In Oklahoma City, we know something of that. We came through a terrorist attack too and found ourselves strengthened rather than weakened by it. I didn't live there at the time, but members of my family did, and I watched as a shared tragedy brought a city together. The strength came not because of fortifications or building more barriers to outsiders and one another, but because of a renewed civic pride built by connecting with one another. Sharing that kind of intense experience creates bonds unlike others. It's the bonds of war or of surviving natural disaster. That sense that there we are and we were all suffering, but we lived through it. We can artificially create something similar when we share about different experiences that link us somehow. I was part of a feminist conscious raising group in the 80s. Yes, the 80s. Consciousness raising arrived in West Virginia a little late. None of us had the same experiences, but opening up to be vulnerable about what had happened to us, from rape to abortion to domestic violence to disrespect in the workplace to inequality at home, generated community. What had weakened and hurt us individually strengthened and healed us together. I've experienced the same thing in conversations about other sensitive and personal topics, like sexual orientation and race. In the right environment, with trust and commitment to stick through the tough spots, honesty, confession, and openness can produce compassion and connection. I've also seen it go badly when someone's pain was too deep for the group to save, or when someone wasn't heard, or someone wasn't able to speak their truth. The risk that exists with vulnerability is always real, if not always as dire as we might perceive it. The risk deepens and broadens whenever we talk about something larger than our personal lives. I'm convinced that one of the reasons wars break out is because leaders are trying so hard to appear strong rather than weak. Fear of vulnerability leads to careless posturing, which leads to the same fears on the other side and more careless posturing, and the next thing you know, everything has blown up. In these days of anxious hotspots from Asia to the Middle East to Africa, I fear this scenario more and more. The dangers of trying to appear strong crop up in all areas of life. In Ferguson, Missouri, we watched armored vehicles face down crowds. The show of strength further alienated people from the police, firing up the crowds even more. Confrontation may seem like the only option in a crisis, but policing experts find more long-term effectiveness in community policing, where officers are assigned to develop relationships and problem solve more than face down or outgun wrongdoers. Instead of armored cars, the cops may be on foot or bicycle. They are vulnerable. Would that work in situations where so much animosity has built up over the years? Maybe not. But in the long run, people facing one another without a lot of weapons and armor between them makes for more effective policing and better human interactions generally. I can think of situations where the weapons and armor were not literal, but where humanity was so deeply buried that weapons and armor made good symbols for what people were doing. I've seen it in organizations. I've seen it in families. Burdened by our own feelings and experiences, we refuse to allow an opening for our own and one another's humanity. Invulnerable in appearance, swaggering, tough, but underneath hurt, fearful, and mourning. In families, it comes up particularly in times of stress, when someone is dying or being born or getting married. Opportunities abound for deepening family relations through shared vulnerability. But often the tough front the church faces dominate. The opportunity is eluded. Why do we do this? And I'm saying we, quite deliberately, because I know I'm as human as everyone else in this. It's because we fear the risk. What if I tell you what I really think and you disagree, even reject me? What if I share feelings that are close to the bone and you take advantage of me rather than reciprocate? What if I only prove what we both already suspect, that my authentic self is not adequate to face the challenge in front of us, or simply I am not adequate? In family crisis, we may end up yelling and screaming at one another and making deeper wounds than we never can heal. In congregations, we may see people leave, abandoning an effort that they choose to love. No wonder we fear the risk-taking. Showing vulnerability always creates risk. Sometimes the risk is too great to justify it. I think of Timothy Treadwell, the grizzly man, the guy who went out and lived with the bears in Alaska, risking vulnerability, but a real stupid risk, because the grizzlies will kill you. And they did. The value of vulnerability fails in foolish risk-taking. But often speaking our genuine feelings of weakness and inadequacy can open up possibilities that we didn't recognize. Researcher Brene Brown, who has an excellent TED Talk on vulnerability, says embracing vulnerability is one of the key characteristics of people who feel connected and loved. Taking the risk can allow others to open up a crack in their own superhero costume, letting down their defenses and creating connection. Consider the heroic woman who faced a school shooter, Antoinette Tuff, a bookkeeper at a school outside of Atlanta, told the emergency room dispatcher that a 20-year-old, Michael Hill, standing in front of her with an assault rifle, wanted the police to back off, but that he didn't really want to shoot the children. In 25 minutes on the phone with 911, she also commiserated with Michael. She saw his vulnerability when he confesses that he had nothing to live for, and she relayed her own experience of attempting suicide. "Let's see," she said, "if we can work it out so you don't have to go away with them for a long time." Here was a young man with a gun. Ms. Tuff was utterly vulnerable, and she saw his vulnerability too. She recognized his humanity and exposed her own. So, finally, he laid down his gun. And she said, "It's going to be all right, sweetheart. I just want you to know that I love you. Though, okay, I'm proud of you." That's a good thing that you're just giving up. And don't worry about it. We all go through something in life. As the police rushed in, she defended him, saying, all he's got is his cell phone. Now, this story did make the news, but not to the extent of the stories of gunmen who end up killing. This story of risk and courage and vulnerability is more instructive, though, than the stories that end up in carnage and destruction. It teaches us that even if real weapons are drawn, shared humanity can keep us safe. Showing your humanity, your vulnerability, challenges other more than responding to them in kind does. It's not an easy teaching. Remember, I don't like being vulnerable. When I'm challenged, I want to respond in kind, aggressively, not backing down, especially if it's a battle of words rather than guns. But I have learned maybe it's aging, that if I want to maintain or grow the fabric of relationship, tit for tat is not nearly as effective. Or of the Tao Te Ching's recommendation on how water works. It does not resist, it flows. The nature of water, at least in its liquid form, does not allow it to directly confront, but instead it moves to the lowest place, around the barriers, seeping into rather than stepping up against. Being like water means relaxing rather than stiffening, staying close gently with a light touch. No fight, no blame, says Tao Te Ching. How that translates into human relationships for me is being in touch with my own feelings and imagining what feelings the other may be experiencing. Then, taking the risk of communication, acknowledging my feelings were hurt or that I notice sadness in your eyes. The hardest part sometimes, though, is not admitting my vulnerability to someone else, but admitting it to myself. Here, there's not necessarily the reward of support or bonding, only the apparent risk of losing a self-image bolstered by lies I've told myself. When we admit to ourselves our own weaknesses, shortcomings, griefs, vulnerabilities, we acknowledge that we can be hurt, that we are not in complete control of our lives, that ultimately we are mortal and will die. That's one of the hardest in all religion, in all of human life, really. We are mortal and we will die. What's more, on the journey towards death, we will make mistakes, we will embarrass ourselves, we will lose things and people that are really important to us. We will be afraid and sad and angry and ill and regret. We will be vulnerable. We are vulnerable, more than any of us want to believe. The gift of it, though, when I recognize the truth and own it, is that I can grow from it. Strength doesn't lead to growth nearly as well as failure and weakness. But when thwarted, expectations help me discover beliefs I didn't even know I held, that I have been acting out. I can change my thinking and find a new way. As I learn from my own motivations better, I find it easier to navigate through others' motivations. But I can't know that if I don't pay attention to my own vulnerabilities, the places I hurt that I don't want anyone else to see. I've also learned through years of therapy, pastoral education, consciousness raising, nonviolent communication, spiritual direction, and other small group interventions, the value of learning about myself with others. Gifts that keep on giving. Sometimes I see it happen in congregations too. I believe congregations are a great place to practice being human. Yes. Which means being vulnerable, sharing ourselves together, learning more about ourselves and others, and in the process building community and commitment. None of it is easy. It is easier together than it is alone. In the words that may be familiar to some of you from George Odell, we need one another when we mourn and would be comforted. We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid. We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again. We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone. We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey. All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us. Yes, we are vulnerable, especially alone. May all of us find the value of vulnerability and the community we need to support and hold us when these vulnerabilities threaten to bring us down. That's the end.
That's a real sermon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so in our tradition, congregations exist because of the generous support of members and friends. It is our privilege and our responsibility to ensure the health and future of this fellowship. To that end, your offerings support the ministry of this fellowship, whether by pledge or donation, and may be offered online. There are several ways to give. You can drop your donations in the baskets that are being passed out by the greeters. You can mail checks to the office, drop them in our mailbox, or call the office to make other arrangements. We are also equipped to accept donations through the Venmo app. Payments through the app should be made to UUFCC offering. If you are with us for the first time, do not feel obligated to give. Your presence is our gift. Join me in listening to the original song by Dave Rowe, Song of Gratitude.
I'm grateful for the sun that shines. I'm grateful for the rain. And when life's bumps and life's bruises come, I'm grateful all the same. So just knowing I am a lonely soul, hand in hand with a world full of lonely souls, brings peace and love to my being. and faith blooms in me again. I'm grateful for music that I may hear. I'm grateful for a tune. The songs that seem to flow through my mind like a river chasing the moon. So just knowing I am a lonely soul, hand in hand with a world full of lonely souls, brings peace and love to my beating heart, and faith blooms in me again. I'm grateful for a smiling face. I'm grateful to see you today. I'm grateful for nature around us all, and for feeling each joy and each pain. Somehow knowing we are all lonely souls, hand in hand with every lonely soul, brings peace and love to each beating heart, and faith blooms in us again. And what is this faith that I'm speaking of? It isn't in some old bearded man up above. It's music and poetry, beauty and love in all of us everywhere. It's music and poetry, beauty and love in all of us everywhere.
Okay, so now we go on to the life of the community. Please check your UUFCC updates, which includes a calendar and connections to Zoom meetings. If you're not currently getting those emails, contact anyone on the membership committee or the greeters that you saw earlier today. So I'm going to bring up Ted, who will talk about the Social Justice Committee, and then Linda will has other announcements today. So.
Good morning. For those who are new, I'm Ted Zawistowski, and I'm here to tell you something about our UUFCC Social Justice Committee and its three ghosts: the ghosts of the present, the ghosts of the past, and the ghosts of the future. First, the present. After many years of service during very difficult times, Herb Levin, the chair of the Social Justice Committee, has decided it's time for him to step down. Mary Lou Kennedy, who was the secretary through all of that, also has decided it's time for her to step down. The reason I'm here is that I am the interim chair of the Social Justice Committee while we're looking for a new chair. And we needed a secretary, and we need a lot of members. So that is our present right now. If we look at our past, we can see a long history of many achievements, of many efforts, of all kinds of activities to try to address social issues of one kind or another, to try to help make our world better. All of these buttons that I have hanging from my neck are souvenirs from some of the practices and activities that we have conducted in the past. And there are quite a few, but this is only a sample of that has been done here over the many years. When things were much easier, we used to draw 20 or more people to our social justice committee, and those were active people, people who wanted to do things and would participate in doing things. Our projects included things like marching together with the coalition of Immokalee workers right through town all the way to Public's headquarters in the middle of the state. And we were there too with them there. We collected receipts from public supermarkets when we went there and bought things, and to show them that their customers were supporting the poor workers who were underpaid and much abused in the farm country. We did many other things of a similar nature. There's just too many to name. For example, the NAACP in this county struggled for years to barely be able to keep functioning. So when people came, school teachers, students, individuals who are having trouble with where they worked, needed somebody to speak up for them, there was somebody who they could meet with and who would go and help. And I know because I accompanied the person who went there to help, and I saw what he could do. We used to have a series of speakers every January, February, March to come in and talk about some important issue of the day, which was very successful. Some of the committees which exist today in our UUFCC began in the Social Justice Committee. For instance, the Immigration Justice Committee, which is so active today and so full of life and achieving so much, began when Betty Barrega brought up the idea at a social justice meeting. And look what it's evolved into. The Climate Action Team began in the same way, coming to a social justice committee saying we have to address this issue. Climate change is real. We have to take action. And they've been meeting through all these hard times, difficult times, mostly by Zoom, to try to keep things going. And I could go on and on and on. There's so many of these things that we had tried to do, sometimes with some success, sometimes not much. Herb Levin, for example, led the Social Justice Committee with the second helpings to help food banks, 3 different food banks in our area, over that period of time to raise over $45,000. A more humble experience was going to Wendy's, which refuses to help the farm workers who are underpaid and who are abused to this day, to get the coalition of Immokalee workers to succeed. Today, the coalition of Immokalee workers is recognized globally for its achievements. We were there to try to help. Which brings us to the future. Our long history can be reactivated, revitalized, and further developed, but only with your help. We need new blood, new ideas, new energy, new causes. We need you to do your share. Attend meetings, take office, lead. Take up the cause for social justice. There is so much need.
Hey, thank you, Ted and Linda. Oh, there you are.
Hello, I'm Linda. I've been following TED since I became aware of UU, so I'm fortunate to do it again today. Two sets of items. These events are all taking place on Monday and Thursday of next week. The Congregational United Church of Christ is in their final week of their Care of Creation series, Stories of Resilience. On Monday, March 20th at 3:30 p.m., discussion of regenerative agriculture will happen. They will view the video Kiss the Ground, which explains regenerative agriculture and makes the case that it's one of the best hopes for significantly reducing atmospheric CO2 and ensuring sustainable agriculture. That'll be followed by a discussion of the video, and they will, and also the farming bill that's being introduced in Congress this fall. On Thursday, March 23rd, again at 1201 Akiesta Drive in Punta Gorda, there's a presentation by Dr. Terry Root. She's a Stanford climate specialist emeritus and Nobel laureate. Dr. Root was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work on the UN climate report that informed Al Gore's book, An Inconvenient Truth. She will be presenting an update on climate change issues, including accomplishments in the Inflammation Reduction Act, as well as the immediate challenges ahead. The Congregational United Church of Christ is a sister congregation. They're very supportive of CAPAS and other issues that we do, so they are really thankful that we would share this information today. In addition, NAACP, it's NAACP week here at UUFCC. Tomorrow night at 6:30, all of the faith leaders throughout Charlotte County will be here at the invitation of the Criminal Justice Committee of Branch 5093's NAACP and the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition President, Richard Patrick. So we are bringing this group together to view a live stream of the Nehemiah Action from the Hillsborough Organization for Progress and Equity, and it is going to be a powerful meeting. I really appreciate all the support, all the openness that UFCC has done this as a group. It is not just this committee, and I really appreciate your support. Also on Thursday, from 6 to 8 p.m., we will have our monthly general membership meeting. We have been rotating through different houses of faith, so I'm so thankful to you for opening up UFCC for this purpose. We have a new president, Connie Payne, who will be speaking, and we also have Marquise McKenzie. He is the outreach director for the FRRC of Florida. I mean, that is a Florida organization. And so we will be meeting him and learning how we can work together. We also have many committees that need to be populated for this important work. And so we look forward to your support in that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda. So we have an announcement here from Corey. Tech meeting, Monday, the 27th at 12 p.m. Check your updates. Come join us, especially if you have any tech concerns. Okay, and on a lighter note, the Caring Committee will provide a birthday cake every third Sunday of the month, a coffee hour to celebrate our members and friends who have birthdays during the month. Come celebrate with us as we recognize Trudy Gerhard, Debbie Conrad, Tricia Lane, Ken Brennan, and Myra Charney. Thank you so much, Caring Committee. Yes. Please notify Stephanie Garrett or the office if you would like your name added to the list. So let's see here, Caring Committee. Okay, if you are aware of anyone within our community that needs the assistance of the Caring Committee, please let us know. The Caring Committee is ready and able to help folks. So contact Jackie Williamson or Debbie Conrad. The closing words for today are from Wendell Berry. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. Okay, now we extinguish the chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of community. May these ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts until we are together again. As you leave, those that need a smooth surface can exit the building through the doors, the double doors in the back. Please enjoy the social time, and we will end with Go Lifted Up by the First Unitarians of Baltimore. Please rise in body or spirit. Thank you. Turn those cell phones on.